Life is hectic, demanding, and doesn't stop. When honest with ourselves, we must confess we often don't know what the hell we're doing. The Larkcast is an ongoing conversation about the inclusive and mischievous nature of God's presence through the lens of all the things that make up this phenomenon we refer to as life. Astonishing grace and refreshing honesty collide right here for your weekly encouragement. Yeah, man, I had a conversation, ongoing conversation with a neighbor. Sharp guy, neat family. Seems to be open to, he's got this yearning for, there's got to be something more. Like the faith he was handed, it never led to the freedom that Jesus promised. Like there's just, something's not clicking. But yet this, the church world and all that it is all that he knows. But he's a sharp dude, and he comes from the business background, and so he's also like looking at Lark and poking around and trying to figure out, like, man, what is this thing, and how do we
Love when
help?
people
And
poke around.
yeah, how does this thing work, man? And he he said, like, the more I keep thinking about it, he goes, you guys aren't like that traditional, that traditional like brand that we find in business or churches where you find like, your tribe, and then you spend all of your time like speaking to the pain of that tribe and offering your solutions for that tribe and building movement, among like that tribe. He's like, the more I keep listening, I'm like, you guys seem to be more passionate about like just truth. Like there's almost this like it in a way kind of like Jesus, you're trying to connect with all people. You're like who's Lark for? Humans, people, featherless bipods. It's like it's for people. But the thing that makes it kind of unique is like he's like, you're just passionate about what's true. You're passionate about just unveiling this like this bigger narrative and helping me see within that, because it's you can't help me by just focusing on like one thing. It's not just the misunderstanding I have of the Father, okay, that's never actually led to the freedom that you find in the life of faith that you see Jesus living by. Okay, it's not just that I've bought this false myth about the God of expectations. It's I also bought the lie of separation, which is why I'm so dialed in on the need for the church being an institution so that it can offer the right programs with the right leaders, of course, to bring about human sanctification. And so I'm starting to see, as I'm listening to you, like this thing, like it unfolds at so many different levels. It's all the same conversation, but there's so many facets because there's just so many freaking things that I have bought in the name of faith that at the end of the day, they're just not true.
Hmm.
Yeah, they're normal, they're popular. It's just not true.
Yeah, and
And
it's like when I stepped away from, full-time ministry, I had like an idea of, you have like a little bit of a vision, but still a lot of like the old ideas, the old clothes of the institution are still, you know, kind of lingering.
yeah,
Um, but it was the undoing um of this idea you're saved by proven faith.
yeah,
And I think maybe for me I was definitely a little bit more on that like great commission, make disciples, we're going to make church simple so that we can go do this missional thing. And come to find out, year and a half, 2 years in, did you bring in this like this mission discipleship thing in like a law, like an expectation. So instead of the
yeah.
expectations being sign up, it's all this like progress and friendships and conversations. And it's hard, dude. Like, the old man dies hard, like we always say. But it was the truth about the reality of it was the truth about good news. And I always
Yeah,
would kind of pride myself on being like a good news, gospel guy.
yeah,
Um, maybe even more so than the rest of the people on staff of the church I was at, or at least those who taught. Um, and that was the thing. It was the reality of how good the good news was.
yeah,
And um, I don't know if like I see my life as it is now, with just being like a small business owner and maybe not having a lot of things to not having like a weekly thing to point to or like a brand, of church
hmm,
or simple church or whatever. I don't know if I would have like stepped away, but it's just this life of just being in my community, owning a small business, rubbing shoulders with all these people, even like doing work for restaurants, jumping in and you're doing photo, you're in the mix, and you're meeting bartenders and you're meeting cooks and you're meeting bus boys and servers and just all these like just people in and around everything that I ever wanted or imagined um life to be, like untethered from the chaos, the monopoly of the church calendar,
yeah.
um is all true, and I'm very thankful, for it. And it was the truth of how good the good news is that allowed me to step away from that without fear, because I realize I'm held by a love that'll never let me go. God's not the God of expectation. Um, he's just my dad, who,
You could like just
um,
stop there. I mean, it's like
yeah.
that's it. He's just my
And so
dad.
having a life now of just, being a husband, being a dad, and just being a person in the community who offers a service, to people,
Hmm.
um, create a creative service. I get to do something I'm pretty passionate about. I get to tell people's stories in non-stupid ways, and they look good and stuff. And there's a lot of pride in that. There's a lot of fulfillment in that. Um, but then the auxiliary thing is I'm in my community. I have a lot of friendships. And you know what? Like, that's the game, dude. What I've come to realize is, man, stick around long enough, identify yourself with Jesus in non-weird ways, and you have these friendships with no strings attached, no expectations. And you know what, dude? Like, when Jesus shows up in people's lives, you're gonna have that conversation because you're the
Yeah,
dude they know. You're the person they know. Um, and because I was like so inundated in the church, and I'm prepping all these sermons and I'm imagining all these passages as a person who spends all of his time stuck in an office prepping talks. I was so detached from like the everyday person's experience of just
mm,
life and work and all these things. Um, and so you imagine all these things, being the ideal version
yeah,
of all of it. And so kind of getting knocked down a little bit and beat up a little bit, and your idealism and your expectations of what it all is. And now to just kind of settle into this groove of where I'm at now, and without forcing really much, just being around, just being accessible. It's some of the cool conversations and friendships that have come from it. Man, I'm just so thankful. Man, I say it all the time. Like, dude, I'm so glad I'm not on staff at a church anymore.
well, that's kind of where the conversation got started, man. So prior to him sharing a little bit of his aha with in regards to who we are and what we do, it kicked off with with him pushing back on something that's been said on this podcast.
He was mad.
No, no, it wasn't like,
Just
upset,
kidding.
just in his defense. But
The
like we've been,
frustration was setting in.
yeah, because yeah, as if you've been listening to the Larkcast, if you're new, welcome. Um, we normally teach through we've been teaching a lot through like various, books of the Bible, key sections that just really, in a sense, like help us grab on to what's being said there. And lately, we've been just kind of pressing into like various things that are being said in the name of Christianity, in the name of following Jesus, things that are being said to us, repeated to us in conversations, um, that sound good and they sound right. They're popular, but oftentimes just don't find their base in what Jesus actually revealed. And so, something that I've said on this podcast was, I forget when it was, maybe a few episodes back, but I was just laughing about, man, if every institutional church, right, you know, closed its doors, it would be the best thing that ever happened for the good of the world. And he's like, man, how can you say that? He goes, and again, he wasn't
How
upset. He goes,
dare you?
I want to know, like, why would that be good? And of course, he goes into like, I know about like time, right? I know like, man, we need time. I've learned that we actually learn to live free. Back up an episode, I unpacked all of this again if you're new, but we actually learn to live free in the passing on of freedom. Jesus inviting us to go and be friends who teach others to live free the same way that he did, by the way, isn't because he needs us. It's actually an invitation to keep learning to live free. It happens in the sharing, not from listening to endless content. And so there's like like a beautiful paradox in that. He goes, I get that. I know friendship is the way. I know it's we see that, but I still don't understand, like, dude, what if my church calendar isn't busy? Like what if I'm just, what if I'm just
Like most people, I think.
yeah, there are the people out there who are exhausted, right? And and all the disciplines and rhythms that have been handed to us in the name of like, what's the rule of life has made its comeback, right? These curriculums for Christ likeness. Yeah, that's eventually going to lead to exhaustion. Um, and then of course from the missional standpoint, right, you've got people exhausted there. But you're right. For a lot of people, man, they just kind of go to a service. And,
Maybe a
what's
men's
the
breakfast.
yeah, so it's like, man, isn't that a good thing? Is what he said. And of course, we got into like, well, what's actually being said in the gathering? And of course, you can see some light bulbs, clicking there. Um, by the way, I have permission to share this. This isn't like, me spilling the beans on some dude's private conversation. Um, some things start clicking there to make it really fast. He sees like, okay, I've been in the like grace, 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 but it needs to lead to actual true, like proven faith that, goes and becomes this person that God apparently needs. I get the exhaustion of that. He goes, but then I've also been in settings where it's like grace, grace, grace. That's it. It's just about grace, And he goes, but I find myself still struggling to live in the freedom faith was meant to bring. And I'm like, well, why is that? And of course, he gets into like the vision of the Father that's presented in this is one that's popular in religion, but actually comes out to be more like a Greek philosophy, a distant, vengeful God who had to shed blood so he could finally be near you. Doesn't exactly lead to reclining in a dad who throws parties. And so he goes, man, like, okay, I get what you're saying. Like, that it's the what's being said there that actually undoes the freedom, even if I just go once a week. And I said, yeah, that's the case for a lot of us. And I've been there. I've been the guy, peddling that. But here's the kicker. He goes, but what if we made one? What if we've made one where it's actually saying like it's always pointing back to the Father that Jesus actually revealed. And it's actually empowering you for the life of friendship, and it's not bogging down your calendar. He's like, can that institution, right, be of a good value? And I said, well, if it was, and if it could, wouldn't Jesus just even once told us to go start an institution? Why is the only thing that he called us to go and do was to go be friends who help others live free and learn to love in him? Wouldn't he have started that institution? And of course you could see, like, the wheels spinning, man. And I said, dude, what we ultimately have to understand is that institutions by nature exist for themselves.
Hmm.
They're self-sustaining, right? In nature. So they don't exist for the world. Every institution at its core sees the world as something that exists for its role.
Hmm.
That's the opposite of what Jesus invited us into. So when I say it would be fantastic if the church got back to this simple movement of just frail, foolish, flawed friends learning to love as they help others live free. Um, when I say that that is something that would be so beautiful to see happen, it's it's not because I'm, you know, crapping on institutions as much as I'm saying there's actually something more bigger, more beautiful to where that leads than anything an institution could ever possibly even dream of.
Hmm.
And that's where he really starts to like lean in. He's like, so this thing for you is like, it's not about like some purity thing in regards to like it has to be just like what, Jesus, as much as you're saying, no, there's the reason Jesus created the church and intended it to be this way, a movement of friendship, is because of where it leads,
Hmm.
what it goes on, right, to do for the good of the world,
Yeah.
not for itself.
Yeah. And because church has been hijacked to become, a place that has programs, um, and just kind of sees people as sort of like things to manage in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like, we don't want you in this office confessing that you're banging your secretary. We don't want to have to deal with that. So like, let's make sure you're, you know what I'm saying, on the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
And because it's really, really hard to start something without it becoming complex, especially with like what's in our imagination with
Yeah.
what is church. Because as soon as you start with anybody, they're going to be like, well, where's this? Where's this? Where's this? Where's that? And so, almost like when I think about it, almost for it to just disappear is probably the best thing. Um, there was this dude in the 1600s that tried to reform it. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
he did. Guy named Martin Luther. He was trying.
he was trying really, really hard, really, really hard. But you think about the early Christians, like, and the whole idea of the temple. I mean, dude, by AD 70, that thing's just gone.
Yeah.
It's just gone. And I'm not,
Yeah, people who were like talking with Jesus in the flesh within their lifetime, the entire thing that everything they knew was built on,
yeah, in the
gone,
later
as
part
Jesus
of,
said.
yeah, in the later part of Matthew's gospel, like Jesus is saying, like, dude, this place isn't going to be here anymore.
Yeah.
It's going to be gone.
Yeah.
And so then what are you going to do then?
Yeah.
And so just the whole idea of the institution and trying to dot all the I's and get everyone's schedule aligned to this God thing so that you can be the ideal people in the world and that this thing can keep going. all the imagination is just gone.
Yeah. Not to mention the ultimate conclusion of you are the temple, as Jesus said. Your very God, am going to live and dwell in you,
Yep.
right? So yeah, but I really just want to be a part of something, Russ. Like you are. You're a
Yeah.
part of the thing. But I
Hmm.
just really want to belong, you know? It's like you already belong to the thing, dude. But I just
But
really need to be
when you
led. I'm
take
like,
that piece
well, he's
away,
in you leading you. It's like, oh wait, what? Like, dude, it's yeah, sorry.
yeah, we don't know what to do because we've defined it as this specific thing.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
journey away from that into a free life where you literally have a vast landscape of possibilities and opportunities to step into. You can go join something that's already existing, um, a job, a nonprofit, a community. You can start something.
Hmm.
You can get some things kicked up. Who do you love? Who do you care for? What do you love? What do you love doing? And so it's like spiritual kindergarten, the church,
Yeah,
how it is. It's like
yeah.
school.
Yes, we forget, like in Galatians, Paul
Show up
refers
at
to the
this time.
laws of
Here's your schedule. The
yeah,
schoolmaster thing. Yes.
yeah, right. Literally calls it a guardian, which in the Greek is the word that was used for a specific role of an individual who would walk a child safely, okay, and on its journey to school, and their job was to deliver the child to the classroom safely. That's how Paul refers to the law. And then it says, until Christ came.
Which
And now
and
we are no
temple would have
longer
been
under
wrapped
a
up in that.
guardian.
Some sort of
Yeah.
organizational sort of idea,
Yeah.
is very much baked into that idea.
Yeah. The living God himself dwells in you. Like, man, just that alone really starts to open up like how we learn, how we grow, how we enter into things, how we're protected in things. I'm just saying so much of what an institution is sort of designed to do dissipates in the reality of understanding Christ in you, the hope of glory, as the scriptures say. And I'll share just a quick little backstory because this might help people out there. But this is for me was the first time I started to like rethink this, like how I eventually landed on being able to say what I said in that podcast a few episodes back that led to this conversation and others, by the way. He's not the only person who reached out saying, I love what you said. I just don't quite understand how that works. Tell me more. So, make a long story short, moved to Chicago 2013 to plant a church. Like every bright eyed church leader, right? I go and plug into the various church leadership networks that are there. They invited me in, to learn from the experts in a sense. Everybody there had this passion about planting more and more churches. Okay, the idea that right, the sort of structured, organized models, you know what I mean, that we have. They all look different. They can be in different sizes, but they're still the same in nature and operation. And of course, these things, these churches, they're all about for the good of the city, for the good of the city. So I decided to do something really radical when I got there. And that is, I decided to shut up and listen. So I go into these rooms and I listen. And then I started traveling around the various neighborhoods in the city of Chicago and meeting with leaders and just listening. And in my listening, I discovered one common theme in every single setting. Okay. No matter what size of the church it was, one common theme. Biggest hurdle, keeping members, keeping members. It's almost like every time they started to get to that place where they felt like they could really make an impact, right? People moved on. And I'm like, okay, why is that? So I started digging and I found one common breakdown: education. You see, in the city of Chicago, high schools take like the education, the public education system nosedives when you get to high school. There's just a few like good options, and that's it. In fact, when I was living in a city, I think it was Newsweek, that did a pretty neat piece, like an article where they were able to, with like actually using statistics, they were able to show, to validate this claim that it was easier for someone to get into Harvard than it was for someone living in the city of Chicago to get into two schools that everybody wanted to get into for their kids. So seeing this, I'm like, well, okay, so education, major need. Well, tying all that together, I found that so many people, like most cities, attract young professionals. A lot of them, right? They meet they meet their partner, they get married, they start a family, or they move to the city where their kids are young. Again, on that career path. But by the time the kids hit middle school, they have to move because they want them to get acclimated somewhere where they have a better high school experience.
And then they moved to Northwest Indiana.
And then they move to Tony's. They move 20 minutes that way. And so looking at that, I said, okay, well, check this out. You've got all of these schools, okay? You've got this city that we say we exist for, the city that we say we love, and they all have this massive need for tutors and for mentors to help create a better high school situation here for the good of the city. And over here, you have this massive movement of volunteers within churches. What if we married the two? What if the churches got involved in bringing about something that was actually for the good of the city that would allow, check this out, that would allow people to stay rooted in the city? Now, here's where it gets cool. See, here's why it matters. All these people that were leaving, they were all out trying to build relationships and love on neighbors, especially in a city where most people don't want to go to a church service. And so they were trying to like love on neighbors and bring good news and disciple people where they were. But by the time their kids hit middle school, right, they're having a jet. Well, why does that matter? Well, it matters because helping someone see what's true, okay, takes time, and time takes trust. And so before anything could really take root, these people who have been investing in them are packing up and leaving the city. And then you start over. And then you start over. I'm like, well, here's a beautiful opportunity right here. And so I presented it. And it was turned down. And it was turned down because, and I quote, we need time and we need resources and we need people's energy for all of the various church programs that we have. If people take that time and energy and resources and pour it into this need for the city, then our churches will cease to exist. And that's the first time it hit me. The problem isn't that we need better or more church churches in in all their various forms. The problem is faith has been tied to a system.
Mhm.
And the opportunities that flow from going back to what Jesus did and actually invited us into doing and how he goes about defining what this church is, what it's called to. Man, that could that could really not just be to the betterment of a city, but to the world itself. So I shared that with
Yeah.
this gentleman. Go ahead.
Well, and that's just one idea
Yes,
to meet a need.
just one.
Just one.
But that one gets
A big
pushback.
one, no doubt.
Yeah.
Probably need some
Be-
sharp people at the head of that thing.
Yeah, because he says, well, man, that's something that, like, churches could really tackle. But when you look at the budgets, when you look at, right, the structures, staff, buildings, lights on, you get what I'm saying? Like, go down the list. And he says, well, man, like, I feel like that's something that could happen through the institution. And I'm like, yeah, but think about what could happen if it happened outside the institution. I said, man, I'll give you another quick for instance. Take healthcare. Right now, there's this massive need for healthcare, people not being able to, to afford it, right? The prices are through the roof. It's everywhere. And it seems like the only imagination that we have is, more taxes, right? And somehow, handing it over to government, as if you see anywhere in the New Testament where they were employing the government to take care of needs. And I said, man, just imagine if you took a bunch of really sharp people, okay, really sharp people and really generous people right now, and instead of them having to give their time and their energy and their resources to the running and the self-sustaining of a machine, they were now free to go love on people, be friends who passed on good news, and within that, at their home and in their work, but also within this need, they could start nonprofits and run really, really good, right? Really top notch, efficient nonprofits that could invite a massive movement of the church, which, by the way, is a global movement of people, to give, if they choose to, generously, joyfully, as Jesus says, to this need. Think about that. And that's when he finally goes, man, you're right. Like there's something that's just so needed in regards to freeing faith from the system. I'm like,
Well, and
yes,
very
because it
few
was never a
people,
system.
yeah, and very few people have ever, man, really had the time, the permission to even imagine it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you brought up like two huge things, right? Education and healthcare. Even if
The
you just
fun ones are
centered
the
it,
small ones.
yeah, even if you just centered it around friendship. Really, dude, all I've been doing for the last X amount of years, I don't know, is just throwing parties at my house.
Bam.
That's it. Just flooding my driveway, you know, with people hangouts, showing up around town, introducing my friends who know Jesus to all kinds of people, just being a connector.
Yeah.
And so many cool friendships have come out of that. People have made new friends. People have started doing things, together. When you like introduce someone and you're like, oh, dang, dude, like now they're friends and they're like got their own, thing going on. Just as simple as, just as simple as that.
Yep.
And it's not a novel thing. It's not even a mind blowing thing. It's not, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, bro, show up at, whatever.
Yep.
All the way down to something as simple as that to something as complex
Yeah.
as healthcare or education. But I never would have been free. I never even would have been able to be in a position to invite anybody other than the people that were just inside the four walls of this church that I was leading. And to
Yeah.
see
You
all
need
these
time.
like friendships and connections happen across my city.
Yeah. Yeah. You're
Also,
ultimately talking
selfishly, I
about,
just love partying too.
yeah, I was going to say, it's not like you were suffering in any of that.
No. Why does it have to be your suffering? You know?
Oh,
I
you
mean,
don't.
there's that
That's why
old
I'm making
like,
the joke.
dude, if it's
It's,
if it's for the Lord, it's gonna suck.
so- that's a whole nother podcast series. No, actually, it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to suck.
The
You can
more it
actually,
sucks, the more godly it is.
yeah. It's like, dude, get out of here. Um, yeah, it's something as simple as that. It's and there's a number of people who have stepped into that. People who were once needing to give all of their time, their resources, and their energy, right, to the running of some form, right, of a machine, some form of an organized, right, again, by nature, institutional, right, expression of the church, now don't need to. And there's other people out there who are throwing parties. Cheers to all of you out there. And cheers to you who are going, how do you throw a party? Go to larksite.com, click on the goods in the menu. You'll see where it says newsletter. Click on newsletter. And right below where you sign up is a list of various things that we've shared in the newsletter. One of them is how to throw parties, where human connection and the simple holding up of a glass, right? and celebration of communion are central. You could do that right where you are. Right. So now it's not just being a friend who's helping people live free. Now it's also throwing parties that help people connect. It's people right out there who are going, I'm going to start a coffee shop. I'm going to start a bar. Right. I'm going to, open a bar. It's John who started a business who's bringing a whole quality, right, of service to the, what I'm saying, to the whole like steam, the run, the running of like literal hospitals and and plants and the things that keep the lights on, you know what I mean? And a business culture within that. I'm just saying it can be starting big business, small business, throwing a party. All the way to you're someone out there who really has the chops to go start a nonprofit that could tackle healthcare.
Some bigger issues, yeah. And I feel like these are the works, dude, that the New
Yes.
Testament talks about. I think that because we've been lulled into this, sort of elementary school version of church, um, where it's here's this day, here's this time, here's these programs, you know, um, there's there's no imagination there, and um, all your all your sort of like God works, you know what I'm saying? All the things that are
Hmm.
expected of you are kind of like handled in like just the perpetuating of, this institution. And so we're left to just kind of like, you know, gaze at our navels and look extremely and constantly inward and thinking that, these works are these, private expressions of holiness, or man, I gotta go do this like thing, whatever. And it's just like, I think the works it's everything we're talking about now.
Yes.
And because the good news is so good and we are actually free, we are handed this vast landscape of opportunities and ideas right where
Yep.
right where we live. But that's hard because we're not used to being free. No one has time to think.
Yep.
No one has time to even step away or even fail because
Yes.
you're in it, dude.
Yes.
You're in it.
Please go try and if needed, fail gloriously. Um, I think that's the invitation here. So when someone says like, dude, when you talk about like it would be so great if, the doors closed and what is the harm in this? Well, most of it comes down to what it is that we're actually being taught about who the Father is that never leads to freedom. But again, let's say that's removed and you've got something else that's more organized and structured and built around, the truth. I would say, well, then turn everybody loose. You wouldn't need it. You wouldn't need it because
Yeah.
the
Ain't nothing
freedom.
wrong with a gathering, dude. It's just
No, we're
when
not
you,
saying that.
yeah,
Yeah.
you start gathering a bunch of church people, they're going to want all the things.
Yeah. Getting together to encourage each other by all means. Amen. But that's free. And you can do that anywhere, at any time, any place. And of course, I've had people say, like, well, man, what did they give to in the New Testament then? And I'm like, well, when you study the New Testament, they gave to empowering the spread of good news, the movement of friendship that actually leads to a movement of free people in the world who can live for the good of the world. They gave to that.
They
So
gave to
a
people
ministry
like
like a Lark.
you. They gave to people like Russ. They gave the
Yeah.
That's what they
And
gave
other
to,
people out there. You don't have to give to me. I'm just
for
saying,
sure.
like, it's that work that they gave to.
Yes.
And the second thing they gave to was to people's needs. They didn't have buildings that they had to keep the lights on. They didn't have mortgages. They didn't have to raise money for capital campaigns. They didn't have to run large staffs. They didn't have to do any of this. That's what they gave to. So our thing is like we're not poo-pooing on getting together. We're by all means get together. But let it be fun, let it be creative, let it be simple, let it be free in all the places that we have like homes, parks, and pubs. Go down the list. And what happens then is that again, that imagination to then let the church, a people, exist not. for the sustaining of their brand or the building of their brand. But now they get to exist for the good of the world, which ironically is where the whole great paradox of human satisfaction comes in. You find fulfillment not by gaining everything you can or the endless navel gazing, growth strategies we have for ourselves. You actually find fulfillment by giving yourself away. Like it's that's that's the bigger picture. That's the beauty that we're that we're espousing to, what we're inviting you into. So, man, is there harm in the institution? Well, there's not harm in institutions. There's just harm when we turn the church into an institution, because an institution is not what Jesus started. And the reason why it's not what Jesus started is because it's not what the world needs.
Mhm.
And just imagine if just even 1,000 people out there grabbed onto that, what can happen?
Yep.
It gets my wheels turning, man. It's I guess we've never really shared it like that, but that's always been sort of that bigger picture, right? Like in the backdrop of like why Lark exists.
Yeah.
We decided to
Yeah,
go
it's like you
upstream.
need, yeah, and if you're listening to this and, you know, you might be, you know, inundated, man. You might be signing up for everything. And man, maybe you're feeling like, man, I need to take a step back and just
Yeah.
kind of like just ponder and consider, Well, just know someone's gonna come asking why you're not showing up, for everything. So you're gonna
Tying
have
it
to
to all
weather,
kinds of misunderstandings in the Bible.
yeah, you're gonna have to
Yep.
weather that because, your maturity and faithfulness is being gauged by your participation in those things. Um, just so just so you know, it's coming.
It's coming. It's coming. And hopefully with us, you'll see the Father that Jesus revealed. You'll find the freedom that faith was meant to bring. You'll step into the simple way of being a friend who helps others live free because it's so life-giving. And then from there, you can get creative in whatever avenue that's in front of you. And here's the beauty in all of it, dude. That connection that we're looking for, you have it. You have it with us. You got it with people all over the world who are grabbing onto this. Most importantly, you have it with Jesus who lives in you. So you're never alone. And third, you're going to find it as you go step into this. You're going to meet people. You're going to build friendships. It's like don't let that false fear, man, hide you, keep you from something that's yeah, it's more daring, but damn if it's not more life-giving.
Yeah, it's like sometimes I think about heaven, the new heavens and the new earth, which of course is not, disembodied souls and we're
Right.
all wearing, angel outfits and floating on clouds. It's a very earthy thing. It's God comes down and makes his home here in this world,
Yeah.
in the new heavens and the new earth. And there's going to be rain and there's going to be need for houses. And I hope it's not one endless church service where we're just singing all these songs because people are like, well, we're going to be worshiping. And I'm like, oh my gosh, dude. That's it, dude, I'm out. I'm freaking
Yeah.
out, dude. I'm so out. Um,
Oh,
I'm not going to get into the weeds on the passages, but there's a lot of evidence that's going to be it's going to feel a lot like life now. Um, you're going to create, you're going to do stuff. I mean, there might even be some building. There's going to be art, there's going to be music, there's going to be
it's gonna be
food.
food,
Who's
drink,
making the food,
laughter,
you know?
conversation.
So you
Yeah.
think about all these things that are going to be, right? And then I just had this thought as you were thinking. I was like, what are all these pastors going to do that don't know how to do shit, dude, other than just speak on Sundays? They have no skills. Outside of that,
Oh man, we've been
like
there.
what are they gonna do?
Yeah,
Cut the
yeah,
grass?
man. Hopefully, yeah, something fun. I love mowing grass, dude. It's so therapeutic.
Yeah, and maybe that's it, you know?
But
Maybe they're just
yeah,
cutting
it's
grass.
ah man, amen, amen, and amen to worship in the scriptures
Not an
being
endless
almost
eternal church
everything,
service.
almost it's almost everything but the getting together to 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 sit at the breakfast table and sing songs to dad. Meanwhile, dad's looking at us going, can we just eat breakfast together, guys? This is a little awkward. Yeah, but there's this one passage. I'm like, yeah, that's called imagery. It's it's let's not get lost here, guys. Yeah, dude.
Yeah, I had a
Amen,
pastor
man.
one time tell me that the reason why we do all this singing on Sundays is to prepare us for that moment when we're going to be singing songs to God,
Endlessly.
and He's going to be right there. We're prepping for
Yeah,
the big moment.
yeah. Yeah. It was so important that Jesus organized singing services. Oh, wait a second.
Oh, that didn't happen.
Wait a second. What's he doing? Oh, well, apparently he's eating and drinking so much with the riffraff that that the religious crowd coined the phrase over him, a drunkard and a glutton.
Yeah.
Think about that, man. Think about that when you think, I mean, dude, you could just stop there. You could almost like put, how funny would it be if we put out a book? Let me just say this before we hop off here. What if we put out like a big, like book about, just church discipleship the whole way? And you open up the book and every page just said the same thing. Just that passage about Jesus, a drunkard, right? And a glutton is what they refer to him as. It's this simple. Go love on people, go get lost in conversations, go toast to the good news.
Yeah. The definitive guide to becoming a drunkard and a glutton, like
Yeah.
Jesus. That's the book.
Go cry
And
till you
it's
laugh and
just an
laugh till you cry.
instructional manual on how to open a beer and pour it into a glass and then just cheers and then just talk.
Yeah. And know that that discipleship, that way of discipleship where people learn to live free is what leads to everything we've been talking about on this podcast. That's what I was mentioning earlier with Lark. We decided to go upstream. Like we could try to organize all the things that could be for the good of the world. That could be Lark. But I'm like, no, dude, that's not something we need to manage. That's something Jesus is doing through a vast movement of people all on his own. What we could do though is we could go upstream and become a voice for truth, become a voice for helping people rub the fog off the glass so they actually see who he is in the life that we've been given and empower that because then everything from there flows.
Yeah, so
So there it
man,
is, folks. That's why we said what we
let us
said.
know. You know, I'm always really encouraged by when people listen and come up with their ideas and make some shifts in life and start imagining things and getting creative and stuff. So
Yeah.
let us know. Bring us into it. We've been there. Love to chat with you about it.
Here to help in any way we can. Until next time.
Cheers.